The story opens with an actor rehearsing his lines. In the story, he plays a priest assigned to perform an exorcism on a possessed girl. As he recites sacred verses from the script, the lights on the set start flickering and the room begins to shake violently. Suddenly, an invisible force attacks the actor, leading to his death. The scene abruptly ends, and we are introduced to Lee and Anthony. Anthony, a drug addict, struggles with his relationship with his daughter due to his addiction. His daughter doesn't even call him dad, a situation that began after Anthony's wife passed away. Before his wife's tragic accident, Anthony was an actor, but the loss drove him to substance abuse, leading him to abandon his career. After spending 2 years in a rehabilitation center, Anthony managed to regain stability in his life. This allowed him to start receiving acting opportunities again, including the role of the actor who dies in the film's opening. Anthony was thrilled to get this role. He visits a church to confess his past mistakes and seek forgiveness. After his wife's death, he ruined his family. He became addicted and drifted away from his daughter. But now he wanted to fix everything. He wanted to work like before, rebuild his relationship with his daughter, and bring peace to his wife's soul. Anthony returns home, where he discusses work with Lee. Lee, who was unemployed, became Anthony's personal assistant. Now the shooting begins. Lee used to accompany her father to the shooting, where she meets Blake, the lead character of the movie. She became good friends with Blake. Blake shows her around the entire set, and as they pass a spot where 2 robots are lying, one of the robots starts sparking strangely when it sees Lee. Regardless, the shooting continues, and Anthony discusses his character with the priest on set. While they are talking about some verses from the Bible, Anthony's nose starts bleeding. However, Anthony brushes it off, thinking it might be a side effect of his medication. The day scenes are completed successfully. After that, Lee and Anthony return to their home. In the middle of the night, while Lee was using her phone, she heard a strange sound coming from the lounge. When she went to check, she found that the door to another room was locked. Meanwhile, someone turned on the kitchen tap. She went to the kitchen and turned off the tap. Just then, she heard the sound of a lock clicking open. The previously locked door was now open, but no one was inside. She decided to ignore all these strange occurrences and was about to go to her room when she saw Anthony, her dad, standing in the corridor. Lee approached him. He was mumbling something. Lee grabbed him and tickled him, which startled Anthony for a moment. He dismissed it, thinking he might have been sleepwalking. The next day, when Anthony went to the shooting set to practice his dialogues, he struggled to perform well. The director grew frustrated and told him, "Maybe if you remember all the bad things that have happened in your life, you'll be able to portray a sad expression properly." Here, a flashback of Anthony's childhood was shown. It revealed that he used to live in a convent where the priest abused the children. Then Anthony began practicing his lines again. This time, when he opened the dialogue papers, he found something disturbing inside. Demonic drawings and a message that read, "Anthony, no one can save you from me in this matter." Shocked, he opened the drawer containing his dialogue papers to take something out, and there he saw a crucifix. Holding the crucifix triggered another flashback of his childhood, where he remembered owning a similar crucifix. After a while, Lee comes and asks him, "What's the problem? Why aren't you able to deliver the dialogues?" Anthony replies, "I can't deliver the holy words of the Bible as dialogue." In response, she says, "That's because your belief in God is a little weak. If you believe in God and yourself, this work will seem easier to you." Hearing this, Anthony gets up and starts feeling dizzy. He tells Lee, "I should go to my room and rest." Lee agrees and Anthony leaves. But instead of going to his room, he heads to the basement. Lee finds this strange and follows him. She hears some noises coming from the basement bathroom. Lee starts secretly recording everything, but suddenly her phone falls. When she picks it up, she sees her father bathing in the bathroom and urinating in front of her. Lee is terrified because Anthony's eyes have turned completely white, as if he's possessed. He looks at Lee with an evil gaze, climbs back upstairs, and continues staring at her strangely. As Anthony regains his senses, he goes to his washroom to take a shower. Lee screams behind him, "You've changed your medicines. This is a side effect. You need to see a doctor immediately." Anthony ignores her words, and as he showers, black marks briefly appear on his body. These marks seem to confirm that he is under the influence of some evil force. The marks vanish after a few seconds. On the movie set, the director, producer, and co-actors remain unimpressed with Anthony's acting. That's why he gets upset and starts drinking again. Meanwhile, the father asks Lee, "Do you believe in what's happening in this movie?" Lee replies, "Not before, But after what I've seen tonight, I'm starting to believe. After this, Lee goes home and sees that Anthony had returned before her. His hands were badly injured and bleeding, and his face looked almost the same. At that moment, Lee says, "You started drinking again. You went back to the life I hated, and that's why I won't stay with you anymore." Hearing this, Anthony became furious. He shouted so loudly that all the glass objects in the room shattered. Then he approached his daughter in a strange manner and said, "Where will you go? You have no school, no mother. There's only me. You will stay with me." Lee, frightened, angrily said, "Anthony, stay away from me." In response, he said, "I am not Anthony." Lee was terrified. The next day, she went to the shooting set, met her father, and told him everything about Anthony's behavior. At night, Anthony would mumble in the bathroom, which she recorded. When her father heard the recording, he was terrified because the situation was serious. In the recording, Anthony was calling out to the demon Moloch, which was extremely dangerous. The father told Lee, "Go to your house. Before taking any action, I need to research more about Anthony and the demon Moloch." That night, while the father was researching Moloch, Anthony was suffering. Meanwhile, the father also sensed strange energy around him. A flashback of Anthony's life was shown, where as a child he went to his father's room and his father abused him. Now it was time for the shooting. Anthony tried to deliver his dialogue, but his acting lacked excitement. Everyone interrupted him, which made Anthony angry. He threw the crucifix in his hand, descended the stairs, and hit his hand on the railing. His eyes turned completely white, as if he were possessed. As he came down the stairs, his body twisted unnaturally, with his back bending in the opposite direction. This bizarre movement occurred multiple times. When Lee tried to stop him, saying, "Anthony, stop," he replied the same way, "I'm not the Anthony." He then started banging his head on the table repeatedly. Witnessing this, the director decided to replace Anthony with another actor. However, during the new actor's dialogue rehearsal, Anthony returned and killed him by shoving a glass into his eyes. This incident led to the suspension of the movie's shooting. The main actress was deeply upset by all this. To comfort her, Lee brought her home, but Anthony attacked both of them again. Frustrated and frightened, they told him to leave. Hearing this, Anthony jumped out of the window. Strangely, instead of falling, he disappeared. Terrified, they went to a priest and recounted the entire incident. The priest explained that Anthony was possessed by the demon Moloch and would now be found where the possession began, on the movie set. Lee returned to the set and saw a Bible lying in front of her. As she entered the room to pick it up, Anthony suddenly appeared and stood behind her. Being terrified, she begins reciting a Bible verse, and Anthony, who is possessed by the demon, recites the same verse along with her. However, the verse has no effect on him. The demon mockingly says, "I've been hearing this for centuries, and it doesn't work on me anymore." Lee then pleads with the demon, saying, "Please leave Anthony. He's dying." The demon responds, "He's been dying for years." After this, the demon attacks Lee, but she is holding a crucifix, which she presses onto the demon's head. This causes the demon to retreat, and his powers are weakened because of the crucifix. At the same time, the father and Blake, who were paralyzed by the demon, are also freed. The father then confronts the demon and says, "Leave Anthony's body and come into me," as he realizes he cannot exorcise the demon from Anthony. The demon agrees, leaves Anthony, and enters the father's body. The movie then transitions into a flashback, revealing why the demon targeted Anthony. As a child, Anthony lived in a convent where the father abused him. After each act of abuse, the father would carve an inverted crucifix on Anthony's forehead as a form of demonic worship. This traumatic experience haunted Anthony throughout his life and became his greatest vulnerability, allowing the demon to possess him. The scene returns to the present, where the demon is now inside the father. To save the priest, Anthony picks up the holy crucifix and begins reciting the Bible verse with unwavering faith in God, having overcome his childhood trauma. This time, the verse weakens the demon significantly, forcing it to release its grip on the priest and ultimately freeing him. In the final scene of the story, we see Anthony and Lee living their normal lives. Anthony went to church every day, while Lee was writing about the incident that happened to her, intending to turn it into a film. The story concludes with this depiction. Subscribe to this channel for more horror creepy stories like this.